So I thought before I started showing you the stitch for this project, I would go over how this project is created, this shell. This is rated an intermediate scale, but I really think that a experienced beginner could do it, and it's definitely an easy skill in my mind. And when I read over the pattern, I was amazed at how it was made, and it's very simple, and the pattern reads very simple also. And there's a lot of sizes to this. There's bust sizes 32, 36, 40, 44, 48, 52. So that means it's small, medium, large, 1X, 2X, and 3X. And this is shown in a size small. And the length is 22.5 inches, 23, 24, 24.5, 25.5, and 25 3/4. And also the materials for this were 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 balls of the spangle yarn. And the hook size is G, and they give a gauge on there, and then you need markers and you need a yarn needle. So it started, this is the bottom of the shell, and the two pieces, this is the front, this is the back, or it could be vice versa because they're exactly the same. So you create these two pieces, and you have, this is the starting chain down here, and if you look really close, all it is V-stitches, and that's a double crochet. See that? Double crochet, chain one, double crochet, and you're working into chain one spaces, so it doesn't get much easier than that. So you start from down here, and for the larger sizes, you're just going to have a longer chain, and you're going to have more V-stitches in the middle. And then you're told to work in rows until you reach so many inches, depending on what your size is. And then, so if I were working this piece, I would have worked it from the beginning here all the way up to here, and then measured. I'd keep measuring that until I got to my measurement, which for a small was 15 inches. So then you're told to mark. So all you do is put a stitch marker in on that row on each side to mark off where your armholes are going to be. So then you keep crocheting so many more inches, and then you just finish off. There's no tapering at the neck or anything. So once these pieces are made, you're going to have one side, you're going to have two sides, and each one is going to be marked at the same row. And then you know where to sew, and then you're gonna, all you got to do is match up your markers on both sides and sew along the side, on each side, and then for the neck edge, the same thing. Just sew, leaving a large enough opening up there. So that's really, really pretty easy. So in this tutorial, I am going to show you the basic stitch. I'm just going to do a little piece of it, and then I'll show you some sewing techniques that will help you to sew here and then sew along the sides of rows. So let's get started with your lesson. So the color I have here is Spangle, and it's called Caribbean. It's a beautiful blue color. So you just start with a starting chain, and this is a multiple of 3 plus 4, so I'm just going to do a small little swatch. So I'm going to count 12 and then add 4. So I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now one thing you might want to do, since you know that you're starting at the bottom of your sweater, and then this will be the side, you could leave a really long end here and then use that later to when you need to whip stitch the sides of the rows together. Okay, so in the pattern, you will double crochet in the 5th chain from hook. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to go in here and make a double crochet, and that's drop a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Then it says to chain 1 and double crochet in that same chain. So right there in that same chain, I did my chain 1, now I'm going to double like that. So there's my first little V-stitch. Okay, now I am going to skip 2 chains. So that's 1, 2, and I'm going to work into that one right there. So I'm going to do a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. Like that. So now I have 2. So now I'm going to skip 2 chains and double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Now when I go into my foundation chain, I pick up the top loop most of the time, but sometimes I go through the extra effort and I go through the top 2 loops, or I turn it and I go into that back bar right there, and it gives it a great finished edge on the bottom. But just for time's sake, I'm just going to go into the top loop. So then I'm going to skip the next 2 and go into the next one with another double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Now in the end it said to skip 1 double crochet and double crochet in, skip 1 chain and double crochet in the last chain. So right there. Now you're going to land up with a double crochet on the end of each row and these little V stitches in between. So the next row says to chain 3 and turn, and that's going to count as your first double crochet. So you turn like the page of a book like that, and then you just work double crochet, chain 1 double crochet in each chain 1 space across. So that's easy. You don't have to look for stitches. You just work that double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet right into that chain 1 space. So right here, I'm going in here, draw up, work my double, chain 1, and work a double in the same space. So see, you're like putting a little V on top of the V. So every row after row 2 is exactly the same as row 2. So this is my last little V-stitch, and this whole sweater is worked just like this. So that's how easy it is. So all you have to remember is once you get established, once you do your starting chain and you have the right number of stitches across your first row, you're home free. All you got to do is make sure there's a double on each side and one of these little V stitches in each chain 1 space. It's like a V and a V. Okay, then you have your little turning chain right here. So this right here counts as the double, so it's a chain right next to it. You're going to go work a double into the top of the turning chain right there. And then it looks like that. You chain 3 and turn again, and then you're back on the right side. Look at that. That's pretty easy. So when you get down here, you'll work a V-stitch in here, and that little, I wish I had a little pointer. I'll use a little needle. This little loop right here is actually the double crochet of that V-stitch there. So you want to work a double right here in that chain, and that's the 3rd chain of the turning chain right there. So you'll be going in right there when you come back. So you just do whatever, pick out what size you want to do, and then highlight the chain. It'll tell you the foundation chain, highlight the measurement for the underarm, and highlight everything that pertains to the size that you picked out, and then work these 2 pieces and mark them off, and then I'll come back on camera with a couple of pieces of crochet, and I'll show you how to sew them together. So I've created little samples to show you how to sew your pieces together. And once you have your two rectangular pieces made, the front and the back, you'll need to sew the side seam together. Now you want to line your pieces up so that you have your starting chain at the bottom. That's the way this shell, this little crochet top works, is you have your starting chain at the bottom. So right here I have my pieces lined up so that my starting chain is at the bottom. And then you want to have, to start out, you want to have right sides facing. It's a good idea to leave a really long end when you finish off each piece, and then you can use that end to sew your pieces together. You can also leave a really long end on your starting chain and do the same thing. So if you have trouble figuring out what right side is, make sure that you mark it on row 1, and it's usually row 1 is established as the right side. So here I have my right sides, and the way I can tell my right side is I have this row of oval loops facing me, and I don't see that on the other side. So over here I do, and over here I do. So I've got my right sides facing me. But now to sew it together, I'm going to put right sides facing each other, and I'm going to work on the wrong side of the piece to sew them together. So then I know that there's a double crochet stitch along the side of each row. So I'm just going to put, in the beginning, I'm going to put a couple of stitches there. And I've threaded a needle onto my long end of yarn. So I'm going to put a couple of stitches there to lock it. And then I'm going to just match up each row all the way through and just sew along the edge of that row. And I'm just picking up 1 or 2 little strands of each row. And you might want to check back on the right side and just make sure that you're matching row for row. And you could also put some pins in here as a guide to make sure that it's all coming together. So that's all you do for like you won't even be able to see this seam. You want to make sure that you use the same yarn color. And then every once in a while you might want to just just pull that to make sure it's not too loose. And then check on the other side, and you can't even see where that seam is. So that's how you sew the side seam together. And now on the top, let me get this needle onto the other side here. So on the top, let me do it right here. The only difference is across the shoulders you have stitches. You don't have the side seam. So all you do there is match stitch to stitch. And I like to just, most of the time, I just like to catch see how there's 2 loops at the top? I like to catch the back loop and this loop, and I leave the front loops there, or you can just go through both loops. It won't show as much as it does on an Afghan. I think for this project it'd be fine to just go through both top loops of the double crochet stitches all the way across, just like that. And then do the same thing every once in a while. Just tug on the yarn a little bit like this to make sure it's kind of straight in there. Just like that. So that's how you sew your pieces together for this sparkle shell, and I hope that you enjoyed this project, and be sure to subscribe to our channel, and the links to everything are listed below the video, and I want to thank you very much for watching.